Welcome to this new episode of Unleashed. In the previous episode, we reflected with various guests on why one shouldn't be just chasing titles. One shouldn't be just looking at identities, but one should demonstrate the passion of what they bring to a particular role. One should build a passion to shape certain markets. We, in the previous episodes, reflected more from within an organization, why, how people look for careers and manage careers, and how some of that initial foundations must start at home. Families must rethink about this necessity to chase titles, and families must start recognizing that they should shape their children to more contribute, add value to the areas of work rather than just look for recognitions and look for the social status behind recognitions. We also reflected about the stress all this brings and how one should recognize that this need for recognition, need for titles is causing stress, and therefore one has to manage that. And Baba has brought in the previous episode through meditations and other practices. This episode is all about people who are shaping the markets, people who are becoming leaders from outside rather than leaders from inside, people who have stretched themselves to create that impact in the market. We have new guests, Divya, Momaya, and Neha Shah, founders of MentorMyBoard, who are sharing why they're driven by the need for better governance, driven by the need to build a whole body of good board members who can shape the corporate India effectively. We continue to have our reflections with Guru Prasad, who was there in our previous episodes, on how he's been part of a think tank and how he's anchoring the Indo-US corridor and looking at mutual business and investment opportunities between these two countries. I begin my discussions with Divya and Neha, reflecting with them what led them to build MentorMyBoard, what led them to champion this cause of building better governance and creating more professionally run businesses.
I've worked with companies like Bombay Stock Exchange, where we saw some good companies coming out on IPO because I was part of IPO team. But not many companies were exploring the capital markets. We still have hardly 5,000-6,000 listed companies.
Correct.
And this was a thought which was always bothering me, that when there are 5 crore, 7 crore SMEs and MSMEs in India, why only 5,000 or 6,000 are listed on exchange, and why not everybody is able to even dream of and think on it?
Mm-hmm.
And then how governance is that differentiator for them to move from here to there was something which had been the foundation of me to think of creating MentorMyBoard. And in fact, that was one of the reason. And another is, so while as a company secretary, I was doing my entire practice, and morning 8 o'clock I'll be in the office, night 10 o'clock I'll be in the office. So that was a trigger as to I need to work on myself. And that's where I was introduced to mentoring first phase. This was mentoring, training, coaching all together. And I was able to shift my entire practice, or I can say I was able to double up my practice in a span of 1 year. And that was one reason why I said that if I'm as an individual able to get so much of value with right mentoring, right guidance, why not the companies which are growing and emerging, and how are they evolving and how are they emerging? And exactly at that same time, there were almost 2 lakh directors or 2.5 lakh directors disqualified by ministry in 2017. Almost 3 lakh companies were struck off. A lot of them maybe the dummy companies or the defunct companies. But few of the promoters came to us and said that if we would have known the consequence, we would have complied with it. So for non-filing of financial returns for 3 consecutive years landed them for disqualification for 5 years. That was the major shift for me to think on, that how can we bring in more awareness on compliance governance to the promoters, and how can we make the governance as the enabler for their growth. And I think that's where learning or being aware that yes, this structure is important, how the boardrooms can become that place of decision making for the companies, how the boardrooms can become the dispute resolution mechanism for the companies. And a lot of companies were still working as solopreneur in spite they were growing and emerging. So how do we bring in that collective wisdom to help businesses to go to the next level? I think those were the foundation
Very fascinating
questions we
because many people see this. Many people see this. Many people, there are so many big four companies. There are so many people who are dealing with this issue, right? They are exposed to this issue either as professionals and all those things. But many don't champion this cause. This whole area itself is not very lucrative. It's just a meeting a government regulation requirement. So
yeah.
how did you see that there is, although there's a gap, of course there's a pain they were going through at that point of time, therefore they felt. How did you see this as some kind of a business you should be putting your thing into? Because of course your strengths, your capabilities are there, but why did you see this as a business at all? So that's something you can get into.
Yeah. When I thought that this is the area we need to work upon, and I first thing I thought is that I need to think like a director. Am I thinking like a director? And that's where I joined a program with IOD, Institute of Directors, which was the only institute in India at that time. And I was in around 157th batch.
Mm,
Because that was a mindset where I was thinking that how can I train people, right?
mm,
Or train directors rather. And when I went through IOD program, 157 batch, every batch 20 participants. So the number was not more than maybe 3,000, or they had their alumni and all, not more
mm,
than 3,000 to 5,000 people. And by that time, India already had 1 crore in numbers. So
mm,
I said, if only 3,000, 5,000 people are getting trained to be directors on boards, there is a market to it. So I think
mm.
that was my initial kind of thought, to
But
think of this as a business model.
so you saw directors as a route through managing better governance, better compliance, and therefore you said maybe groom directors as the
Yeah, nurturing the thought leadership or nurturing the people taking decisions was very important.
Guru shares how this whole think tank around defense started, how he got involved in it, and how this evolved, and how it got recognition at the highest levels as it went along.
I'll go back to where it started, especially this Indo-US journey for me. Yeah, I moved to US almost 18 years back. The journey has been quite exciting, eventful. It's also been challenging, but I've enjoyed the challenges. A few years back, there was a group of leaders from defense in India. One of them is a war veteran who happens to be also my cousin. He called me and he said, "Hey, Guru, I'm starting a think tank. I want you to be a part of it." And I wasn't really plugged deep into the think tank
Mm,
ecosystem, but I broadly had an appreciation of what think tanks do because in the US, think tanks are very powerful. I was happy that a group of people from Army, Air Force, and Navy in India were forming this think tank called Indus International Research Foundation. And just to be helpful to them, I said yes. I didn't even think twice. I jumped in. There was a tremendous takeoff unconsciously. Nothing was really planned. There was no huge strategy. Focus was on strategic studies and
mm,
aerospace and defense and helping policymakers and defense leaders, thinkers, ex-army generals and chief of army staff and navy admiral and so on and so forth, who held huge titles, who wanted to do something beyond and give back to where they came from. I was the only member from US,
mm,
and defense in India is very different from what we could do from US,
mm,
right? You've got to really establish that correlation. So we were thinking about what US should do. And then this Indo-US relationship was a hot topic, is still a hot topic. Will continue to be.
mm,
And then I suggested to them, look, while you're focusing on strategic studies in defense, let's also look at the Indo-US corridor and see what we can do as a think tank because we developed a pretty good network and we started conducting seminars. We started involving change makers and decision makers at all levels, political, economic, people who really matter started taking interest in what we're doing. Our goal was to bridge both nations and add to some kind of economic acceleration in
mm,
the small and medium segment. And luckily, we got noticed that this was not part of the design. I got a call from US Embassy one day and they said, the Prime Minister is visiting New York and he wants to meet you. Are you available? And that was a huge wake up call for me. It was a little unbelievable. So then I was invited, met Modi, met Jaishankar, Ajit Doval in New York. We had a pretty comprehensive discussion on what to do between India and US. They were more interested in finding out where are the opportunities for India in the changing geopolitical situation. And that was a huge motivation. And Modi was very clear. He said, look, every time I come to US, thousands of articles get published. Even before I arrive, there's a lot of hype. Press publishes things which are there, which are not there. And then we're wondering where is the real opportunity. That's why I wanted to cut the chase and meet people on the ground who are involved in this Indo-US relationship, especially from an economic standpoint. So I wanted to meet you guys one on one and find out the truth and what's happening on the ground. That was very humbling. And then started the journey. After meeting him, there were a few states which approached me and they wanted me to connect them with Indian ecosystem because there are many underserved states like Colorado, Utah, Indiana. They're really not focused on India. In fact, Utah never looked at India as a strategic geography for expansion. And World Trade Center Utah called me and they said, look, can you help us in India and let's take a delegation? From my standpoint and from a think tank standpoint, we're looking to build a small and medium business corridor between India and US. So when I say India and US, it's typically where we come from our work related background, outsourcing and offshoring and nearshoring. It was always about bringing US, European companies into India, Asia Pac. But now the focus is both ways. And there are, I think, hundreds of Indian companies wanting to come to US. So when we say collaboration, we're looking at both aspects of helping companies both ways, find partners, help them to connect with investors where appropriate, and specifically give them some kind of soft landing options, especially for Indian companies who are more than qualified to move to US. Because if you see the shift that's happening, I think till 5, 10 years back, it was all about services. And today India is looked at as a manufacturing destination. So all the dynamics started playing out. We were supported by World Trade Center. They said, look, we will invest and let's build a pilot project between India and US and create this corridor in the small and medium segment. And that's really how it began.
Divya and Neha again shared their experiences of building Mentor My Board, the challenges they faced, early recognitions versus inability to scale, the small pivots they made as they went along in their journey. So you started with the idea, you built the platform, you brought the mentors, you're constantly looking for the right people. You're looking constantly for the right sessions. What has the journey been so far? What are the challenges? What are the issues? How did you stay through? How did your mission stay through in this whole thing?
So, if I have to start the way she said, we took 1 year to identify who would be the right tech guy to help us build the platform so that we can scale globally, not only nationally. So, that person, when he came in, we had certain set of thought process that we wanted 8, 10 different things to be built on in that platform. The way we wanted LinkedIn, we wanted kind of networking, we wanted mentoring LMS, we wanted everything in one platform. So that guy had to continuously be agile with us, open with us to understand. And then at some point of time, even tell us that, okay, see, these things will not be possible to come on the same platform. So you will have to hold on with your demands. It Today, what the platform looks like has taken 3 drastic and dramatic changes after which it is up and running and the way we wanted it. But it took us 3 times of revamping, 3 times the money that we invested in the platform. Along with the platform, people, the mentors who are equally an important pillar, I would say, in the entire concept or ecosystem. Today, we have been blessed with more than 120, 25 mentors with us who are working with us on different levels at different mandates and different consulting assignments. With this engagement with the mentors, I feel that we have been able to value add to all the pillars of governance, where it can be promoters, it can be directors, any kind of individual. So that was one important part. Understanding the evolution of this entire concept, the challenges that we faced was definitely first was resistance from a lot of people while they said that what is the need? Why do we come to you? Probably they compared us with IOD, with different institutes. They held us that you're not the IIM, so why mentor my board? What is it that we gain from here? But understanding the value add that we could make to them and learning about those aspects, what we did differently, probably brought them back to us time and forth. And that was what was the evolution that has happened now. So people now understand that this is a dynamic ecosystem that we have created, and it is not only a learning or a training platform that we have created. And that's the agility, and that's the way you also rightly said that we've been open to a lot of ideas, and we've constantly evolved and taken the best ones together to see how is it that we change the model and we fit, or we can give the best to what our customers or our clients require. So that has been the evolution. Yes, we've seen people who have not probably wanting to get associated, and then on a later point of time coming back to us, getting associated with us in a different way probably.
Very fascinating, because I think in this journey, obviously, like you two as individuals, must have had a lot of self doubts, lack
Absolutely.
of trust in yourself, like faith in your own abilities, faith in what you're trying to work on, the issue itself, the faith that, this will be successful, what you're setting out. What are the dips you went through? How did you probably take it back? And how did you work on the faith you had in yourself? How did you build that faith in yourself and faith in the, cause you are working on?
Yeah, I think this is, very, I can say, emotional question for me. Last 7 years, sometimes I feel, is the journey too long for me to reach where I am? I could have narrowed down this journey. But somewhere, I think it's a roller coaster journey. There was a time we had the peak of our experience when Finance Minister graced the occasion for us in a conclave when we held Women Directors Conclave in Bombay Stock Exchange. And then we had all the struggles that we are not able to get people for those courses which she launched. And we had a team, but we were not able to convince people the cost, the value addition, what we are doing. Are we really adding any value? Are we really living our purpose? Lots and lots of confusions and the self doubts started emerging. Till that time, I think we had seen all the good things happening, and then after that, to survive, started thinking that, oh, we really are we really doing what we need to do? Because when we started, or when I started initially, the thought was to build in more boardroom effectiveness, and we were moving from boardroom effectiveness to only training the directors. So I think that was the challenge in the mind constantly. And I think for me, throughout this entire 8 years journey, Neha has been my constant support. You know that, okay, if I am not there, she's going to handle it. I keep telling this a lot of times that it took me 1 year to convince Neha that why we need Mentor My Board, platforms like Mentor My Board. But I'm glad that she took up that different path, which was absolutely not to her what she was doing, basically. From there till this journey, if we could navigate together, it's only because we keep challenging each other that this is working, this is not working. How can we make it better? How can we identify something different? If this is not working, what are different ways? So that startup journey, even if we say we are governance company, we are helping people to create boardrooms for the bigger companies, we still are micro as a business unit ourselves. And we have our own roller coaster ride as a leader. But one, I think if I talk about me, because I was so much passionate about the idea of effectiveness, I was so much convinced on that this is the need. I kept pumping in money because definitely I have my another business. And the money which comes and gets generated was going in to build up this
Correct.
platform.
Yeah. So I think one what you said, what kept you going is there is a passion for the issue and the belief in the issue. How many houses have been picked up, and but you also had a monetary cushion which help you not to. I think that both were very important for you in this journey to stay on this and this thing. How about you, Neha?
For me, it was actually a roller coaster ride because, as she rightly mentioned, she took 1 year to tell me or convince me that I can be a value add to this particular concept of Mentor My Board because it was very new to me. I had been doing compliances, but I was never acting in the front end. I was always at the back end handling things. So the front end kind of interaction was completely missing for me. And I was completely clueless as to why should people leave IIMs or the big fours and come to us to get trained for themselves. So that kind of kept me a little hesitant initially. But once when I was in it, I was clear that, okay, now nothing doing. So I don't have to turn back and look at what was in the past. From here, how is it that I carve my journey was my entire focus.
Guru also talks about the challenges and credibility issues he's faced as he went along in this journey of building this Indo-US corridor.
So when we started, many people did not even know what is a think tank. It was hard to even approach people and say, "Hey, we have a think tank. So what do you do exactly?" I think even within the think tank, it took us some time to evolve our why and our purpose and get the clarity on what are we representing and what is that impact that we are seeking to create. So the purpose was clear at a very high level, but it had to be broken down.
Cascading.
Yeah, it has to cascade to stakeholders at all levels, both internally and externally. That was one of the biggest challenges. So everyone was learning. I was also learning. The second challenge we had was funding, right? And obviously, it's a voluntary organization, and think tank has no money to start with. And now there are think tanks like ORF, which is backed by Reliance, and they're the leaders, at least from an Indian standpoint. But we were a startup, and we found it hard to fund certain projects that we wanted to achieve, including we had a lot of knowledge power, but we didn't have the money power. Even to release the first year book, the coffee table book, it was quite a journey. We had to kind of make sure that there was money available, and of course, some of us stepped in, and it happened. I think this was the second challenge, and the third challenge is when you're a startup, even from a think tank nonprofit perspective, a startup is a startup. You have all the typical challenges. And see, every startup, whether you're commercial, nonprofit, education institution, whatever, there are two things that are critical. One is capital, the other is customers. And what comes first is $1 million question.
Correct.
And we just had intellectual capital, and we had to bank on what we had in terms of our strength, right? Of course, we had the networks. I think that was a blessing. Networks were there between 8 or 10 of us in the board. I think each one of us had access to people that could help. Some patrons joined us. Some well-known diplomats, they helped as well. But the journey was not smooth. Even when we took the first delegation, and although World Trade Center was backing it from Utah, many companies were not sure what to expect. And so we kept the expectations very low. We said, look, we're going to India. We're not going to sign contracts. We're not going to come away with billions of dollars of contracts, or we're not helping you sell to 1 billion customers in India. That's not going to happen. This is exploratory. If you're interested in India as a geography, this is a good opportunity to meet some relevant people in your sector.
How
So
did
we
you make
kept,
India doors open? How did you build credibility in India to open doors for you, for
yeah.
people to
So
meet you?
yeah,
Because
that
this think
was
tank is still evolving, right?
it is still evolving. As I said, I think individually we all from our individual backgrounds we could
Networks.
connect.
You used your network.
Yeah, we use the network, and also I think there are very few think tanks. I don't know how many, maybe less than 10, if I'm not mistaken, which are in the space of aerospace and defense from India.
Got it.
And if I'm not mistaken, we are the only other think tank which is playing in the Indo-US sector, Indian roots in the US. That's probably what
Opened up many things.
which is why we got the seat at the table to meet the prime minister and so on and so forth. So that helped. I think the purpose of this think tank, the cause was very credible. There was a real need for something like this, and there was backing. So, and also because there were a few diplomats involved, it was easy for us to connect the dots with the Indian embassy or the consulates in US. We have a yearbook, which is a collection of articles from pretty
Great.
well authors, mainly focused on aerospace and defense.
Mm.
But we plan to diversify that now. We've released two yearbooks,
Mm.
24 and 25. In fact, we even presented the yearbook to the Prime Minister and a few others.
Mm.
That's one publication we will kind of standardize on, release it every year. And if you look at our website, I think there's a collection of more than 300 articles. And each article is tremendously compiled, pretty well known authors,
Okay.
experts in the sector, thinkers, a few journalists have contributed. And
Mm.
of course, all the well-known names from defense in India have written. They
Mm.
continue to write, and of course, we have these diplomats on board.
Mm.
They're writing as well, and they're also speaking in conferences. We're organizing webinars, so that journey continues.
Divya and Neha share the challenges of building credibility and how they have invested to even train themselves and be in those different situations which will help them to shape the governance and building board of directors better. How did you build a presence? This is a very vast market. For you to, in this space, to build a credibility, build a presence, as an organization, of course, individuals you're saying I'm grooming, but how did you build your presence and credibility to be meaningful, impactful in this?
I started by getting educated about what is independent directorship, from attending the sessions, right from, kind of learning everything from the scratch. I did my independent director's exam. I mean, I cleared my independent director's exam so that I don't feel left out, or people don't feel that, you're not, you're yourself
Qualified.
not on board of any company. How can you understand what are the challenges and
Mhm.
situations? I am today successfully on board of two listed companies. I am an advisory board member to an NGO. So I have been handling this role now, and I can now kind of go ahead, speak confidently, guide businesses on their challenges. So
Mm.
that has been a complete shift and evolution in what I was before and what I am today. Right from being an HR, getting coming to compliances, handling it for 10 years, that agility has kept me going. But yes, definitely, I love learning new things. So that has been my passion always. And then she had been a wonderful support to me in all the junctures of my life.
Mm.
I think a very important point here was that, I mean, my stint with Bombay Stock Exchange, I was with BSE for 6 months. But in that 6 months, I had built few relationships, a few connections.
Mm.
And when I was building up Mentor My Board, I thought from where you are at just a startup level, you can't really create the big impact. You need big players to come and partner with you. And we were really lucky and fortunate enough to, get support from BSC.
Mm.
So they partnered with us, in few one of the online program. What we did, the first program we did was Independent Directors Summit,
Mm.
which was completely virtual. Then we did Women Directors Conclave. So they came and they supported us there, that okay, we will give you logo presence. But that kind of support gave us that big vision,
Mm.
that okay, when regulators are also thinking that this is a very important area, then your ownership and responsibility towards making sure that you're working for that cause becomes bigger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also their presence is helping you to have the credibility in the market.
Absolutely. So when we created a second Women Directors Conclave,
Mm.
uh, it was the first event. We were supposed to do offline, where finance minister, we invited her and she graciously accepted our request. And it was at the BSC, Bombay Stock Exchange auditorium, the convention hall. And it's a massive convention hall, that ring where a lot of people used to trade in earlier times. And having finance minister bringing to the Bombay Stock Exchange and delivering the address to almost 1200 people was
Wow.
kind of the 600 physically and 600 700 virtually. So that was kind of a moment that we said that, oh, we have so much to do more. So I think that has kept us going. And we also always try to kind of identify what's not in the market and build up that. I mean, we were the first ones to talk about the communities. Today a lot of people are talking about communities. We were, I think, one of the
First
first to
months you
talk
can.
about directors communities. We were the first to talk about these kind of mega conclaves. the virtual conclaves, what we started doing it. Women directors, a lot of people were doing something or the other. But women directors, we were the first people to speak about the larger issue of having more women representation. Today, there are a lot of people who are talking about the, a lot of people created their own courses, women leaders and directorship. So I think that even feeling that yes, you're doing something important, and then a lot of people are following you. Whether I really don't look at that are they ahead from you, or you are ahead, but at least you become the trendsetter. So I think that is what something we keep talking about, that whether what speed we are growing, what speed we should grow is a different matter. But whatever we are doing, are we really satisfied about that yes, we are doing something for the nation building. I think that keeps nation building is a word which we keep talking to ourselves, that we have some contribution from our side to that.
This episode is all about shaping certain things in the market, showing leadership to shape the future of certain areas you are interested in. In case of Divya and Neha, it is a shaping of corporate governance. It's a shaping of building better governed organizations. It is shaping more leaders to come to the market. It is getting better quality of directors managing businesses. And their journey has been championing this cause, putting the efforts, building credibility, and making that happen. And they're truly today leaders from outside in shaping this. Guru saw this opportunity of Indo-US corridor, opportunity of building a think tank and using the think tank to identify mutual opportunities between US and India. His efforts were more driven by the helping SMEs, MSMEs in this space to find businesses in both the places grow mutually. But his effort has been so good, along with the lot of the think tank, that it is getting recognition at the highest levels. He's becoming the sounding board to some of the highest levels of people in both the countries. So it's all about becoming leaders from market and shaping it. They stayed through difficult times. They didn't even recognize that they were difficult times. The passion for making this happen in both the cases, Divya, Neha, and in case of Guru, kept them going. And the results followed. And when the results followed, recognition followed. Yet they're still in the beginning of their journeys. The potential both these groups bring is immense. This podcast, the reflections with them, is a recognition of the work they are doing. And this podcast is a recognition of the potential they can bring to the markets.